I'm Simon Bevan and I've been a trustee since November 2011 and I've been treasurer all that time, so kind of responsible for looking after the finances of the business, of the charity, including the funding. Yeah, I suppose the first thing we did was Kilimanjaro, and then, which is fairly standard stuff, and then we did something called the Gobi March last year, which is a 250-kilometre multi-stage thing over 7 days, where you do 6 marathons in 7 days. Right through the desert, probably starting down from the mountains. That was the first big one. So I played sport as a child and gave up at age about 25, I suppose, when work overtook my life. Played a bit of tennis and squash, but that was all. A bit of five-a-side football. And I just really needed to do something, give myself a challenge, and it was the London 2012 marathon that I managed to get a place for that got me started, because I had to train very rigorously for that. And I realised that I needed a goal each time I was going to do some exercise to keep going. So I needed to set myself another challenge after I'd done that one. So during 2016, to raise money for the centre, we're doing a number of things. We started over New Year by going up to Machu Picchu. So we trekked in Machu Picchu, which again is pretty standard, but it was great fun. And that wasn't so much about fundraising, it was just a challenge and to get used to altitude, because during the year we're going to do some other things. So got some more marathons coming up in Milton Keynes. Couldn't get London, got Milton Keynes instead. Paris and Berlin, and then the really challenging one is going to be the Bhutan Ultra Marathon, which is 200 kilometres. Right, it has to be Bhutan because it's a place I haven't been to. Bhutan is meant to be the happiest country on earth. It's the only country that measures its gross national happiness. So I think it's a very unusual place. I'm quite interested in the Buddhist side of life, and it's a very Buddhist spiritual place apparently. Stunning scenery, temples on the sides of mountains and things, and it's going to be challenging because it's very much at altitude. You go up to about 4,800, 4,900 metres, so plenty high enough to get altitude sickness, and it'll be very thin up there, so running at that height is going to be challenging. Blame my wife for that one. So we were looking to do a cycle. I quite like cycling, prefer it to running, to be honest. And so she went off looking for an interesting cycle challenge, and she came across something called the Gobi March and the Four Deserts series of races around the world. And she signed us up for it without really telling me. She just thought it was an amazing thing to do, and she's right, it is an amazing thing to do, so I don't regret it. Once you get into that sort of thing, you meet people who tell you about other races in other parts of the world and other things that you could do that would be way beyond your normal comfort zone, and you realise these are extraordinary people doing extraordinary things, but by the same token they're normal athletes, they're not sort of super athletes, most of them, and you realise that you could do that too. I think probably the best experience doing a race would probably be being Gobi. I mean, there was a terribly hard day. We started in the mountains and it was cold, freezing cold. We quite literally had every piece of clothing on and was still cold. You have to carry all your own clothing, so you don't have very much with you. It's all in your backpack. And it was snowing, and once you get wet, you get really colder. So it was an awful day, nearly finished me off. But I got through it, and 4 of us finished together, crossing the line together. We saw each other through the last 4 hours of it or something, walking around together. And it was an extraordinary feeling of comradeship and support. It was amazing. Yeah, I mean, find something that's a little bit more difficult than you think you can do. Set yourself a goal that's just a bit more challenging than you've ever tried before. There's nothing like doing something that's beyond your expected potential to really motivate you and give you a goal. And you do need, if you're like me, you do need something like that to be disciplined about preparing for it and get out training, and when it's dark in the morning, force yourself out of bed, because otherwise it's easy just to stay under the duvet. It's a bit selfish, so I wanted to do the challenges for personal reasons, and I wanted to raise funds for the charity, for the centre. So the two kind of happily came together. There could be other things I could do which would be easier in some ways, but less aligned to what I'm trying to do for my selfish reasons, which is set myself personal challenges that I know will stretch me and I hope make me a better, more interesting person. I think, why does the centre need the money? Well, you know, in these days of austerity cuts and things, for a centre that has it traditionally had a lot of reliance upon public sector funding, and increasingly has much less of that available. Has to find other ways, and we need fundraisers who will go out and do things like this, people who will actually take the centre's purpose as being part of their purpose and try to do something to help. Yeah, it's great. I mean, we don't always stay together all the way through the races, partly because we want to meet other people, and that's part of the experience. But it's great because we do support each other. We do the preparing, which does require a lot of personal discipline. We each know what the other's going through. We each know what the other's trying to achieve, and we support each other through that. And as much as the race, that's part of what you need. Someone who actually understands why you're going out for a 2-hour run on a Sunday when you could stay in bed or you could make the lunch. So having support at home that appreciates that is very, very important. The race itself, or the events themselves, I think it's very useful to, at the end of the day, to debrief and work out what you're going to need to do differently in order to have a better day the following day. Someone to pop your blisters for you, someone to put some bandages on if you need that, and just to sort of, perhaps even just to massage a sore muscle, anything like that can be really, really valuable. I think my top tip would be to really commit yourself and don't be shy of asking friends. If you've done it before, you do want to be careful not to just keep badgering the same people, but throw your net wide beyond your immediate family and friends. Use social media. I use LinkedIn and Facebook, and I know there's lots of people who have given already and they won't give again. That's fine, but recognise there's lots of people who, for whatever reason, haven't seen it before, haven't given before, maybe new friends, and ask them to share it with their friends, because their network will be much wider again than yours, and some of them will and some of them won't. But don't be shy of asking. And in business, I ask my clients and my work colleagues, most of whom are able to give a little bit, and even if it's only a couple of pounds, it all helps. So the people who organise the Gobi March organise, they have something called 4 deserts, so they do desert races in Sahara, Gobi, Atacama and Antarctica. I don't fancy Antarctica, but I do fancy Atacama, which is in Chile. So really like to do that next year, and they'd also do they do a roving race every year, different venues. Sri Lanka, which is taking place pretty well now, but Namibia is the one I'd like to do that they organise. So I guess these are places in the world I'd love to go to. So selfishly, it's a great place to go and visit, to go and do it and take a challenge on there. It is a kind of double win. So there's two things I found in doing running challenges that worked surprisingly well. So perhaps I'll give you 3 tips. One, go on to something like the British Heart Foundation website, where they've got some really good training programs for marathons, and follow one of those. Within that, you'll find they have 2 types of thing which might not be intuitive if you're a long distance runner, but interval training, fartlek training, and something called Kenyan Hills training, which I had no idea what either of them was until I started doing it, but they both help build your stamina in ways that you'd be surprised by. So fartlek or interval training is doing some sprints and then just jogging a bit and doing some more sprints. So although you are never going to do that in a race, it does build stamina in a way that is surprising. And the Kenyan Hills thing is just finding a hill. It doesn't have to be a big hill, hilly bits to run up and down, up and down, up and down. And again, remarkably effective at building stamina. So one more tip for runners is diet, something I'm not so good at. So in theory, I shouldn't be drinking alcohol at the moment. I'm trying to eat less sweet. In the say 2 months before I run, I will try and cut both those things out. But that's hard. But diet makes a big difference. I know it does. I can feel it when I'm running. So think about that. Do some research on what works for you, and perhaps keep a diary as to the days when you know you've eaten well and what running felt like, and the days when you didn't eat so well and what it felt like. And you probably will notice a difference.